Hi, welcome to This Week in Ames. I'm Susan Guiazda. On today's show, we check in with the Ames Planning and Housing Department. My guest today is Kelly Diekmann, Director of Ames Planning and Housing. Kelly, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you.
So it's been a while since you've been a guest, and I think you were fairly new then. Tell me a little bit about your background and what you do with the Ames Department of Planning and Housing.
Sure. So I've been with the city for about 2.5 years now. I think I was here only for a few months when I first came to visit with you. My background is in community planning. I worked in Oregon, I worked in California before making the leap back to the Midwest and here to Ames. I'd grown up in the Midwest and we were looking for a return to the Midwest, and Ames was a great location for us.
You actually spent, I think, a semester at Iowa State?
I spent my freshman year at Iowa State before I transferred back to South Dakota State to get my degree in geography.
So I'm assuming a lot had changed since you'd been to school here?
Significant things had changed, yeah. I kept trying to remember what little things, like how did we go to places in the early 90s that are different than today, and how did I get to my dorm at the Towers, and where's Target? Target moved, and how was the mall doing, and all those things. Yeah, the power plant was still at the end of Main Street, though.
Yeah, one of the more significant changes has been the growth and enrollment at Iowa State University. In a community like Ames, with the university at its core, planning plays a pretty key role in sort of deciding future steps that the city will take to grow and progress.
Right. So one of the relationships that we have to deal with in Ames is that Iowa State, as a state institution, it controls its own operations. It controls its campus. It controls its enrollment. The city of Ames really doesn't directly affect how Iowa State operates. We have a lot of partnerships which are great for the community. We have shared fire resources. We have public safety coordination. We have a lot of those types of coordination things. But from a planning side, we stay aware of each other's actions, but really we are acting in response to how Iowa State grows. It's been about 7 years of enrollment increase. As a university, they've grown, I think, over 8,000 students, though, in those 7 years. So those are substantial increases. Most cities don't see 1,000 new people show up in 1 month. That's what we regularly see in August since I've been here. The city has goals of looking at Campus Town as one of those anchors for how to provide services to students and provide housing opportunities for students. So in this last year, we've seen 3 major reinvestments in terms of student housing related projects, 2 on Lincoln Way and 1 on Chamberlain, both open at the end of the summer.
And that's a pretty significant change. For those people who don't get into or around that area very often, they may be surprised to see what I would call a greater density of residential and business buildings just in that Campus Town area, sort of in the what we call like the Lake Laverne area. It looks different.
Yeah, it's quite a bit different. Those residential projects combined with the Kingland project, which is actually all commercial, it's office and retail, so it's good to get a little bit of a mix of employment in there too. Just the look, the height, the feel is completely different. It's more of an urban experience, which really kind of fits because Campus Town's always been envisioned as this pedestrian, walkable environment. In current planning thought, you need density to support that, though. You need a lot of people, a lot of activity. So adding the housing and the jobs together really creates a dynamic that helps support that pedestrian-oriented concept for Campus Town. One of the other big changes, not just the look, but because of the new spaces, there is a different shift in some of the business mix that's out there. Starbucks showed up at the corner of Lynn and Lincoln Way as a result of one of the redevelopment projects. CVS opened a pharmacy in Campus Town. So services that you would normally have identified with Campus Town are starting to come there because it's viewed as more marketable now in terms of how space is being rearranged and redeveloped. So you still have a mix of small business, but we're also seeing now interest from regional and national tenants to kind of diversify that mix and maybe the audience for customers to Campus Town.
What I found so interesting about the pharmacy relocation is that it wasn't an existing chain that just opened another branch, but that is their signature, their first step into Ames was right there on Campus Town.
And it was interesting working with that. Most pharmacies want a drive-through location on a busy street, which is what most people want. But pharmacies, especially CVS, they're experienced in urban environments and know walk-through traffic is is as important or can be more important than parking lots and drive-throughs. So when you started to explain the idea to them and the corner that they were going to be on, they really bought into that idea that there was a vitality here that could be supported, and they really wanted to be part of that.
Well, Campus Town is just one of the areas that the community is seeing growth. I know part of being in a planning department is sort of looking at that big picture, seeing how the community is growing, and maybe trying to play a hand in directing some of that growth.
Right. So the city works from what we call a comprehensive plan. So we try to take at least a 20-year vision and do some projections on job growth as well as population growth. And with those two assumptions, you can kind of take different parts of that and say, where would it fit best in the city? Where can we serve it best? And the city did that comprehensive planning effort last in 1997. We've done many changes over time to deal with situations that come up that you couldn't have forecasted. But we're still working through that plan, and we have some general growth areas that we would like to see growth happen in. But what we're really seeing now is how do we do more infill? How do we be more core-oriented for infill, as well as allow for some of that perimeter growth? And the things that we're really seeing a lot of pressure on, which isn't a surprise, is a lot of high-density housing needs for apartments. Some of it's student, but a lot of it's really workforce. What's really kind of missed in the whole conversation about the growth and enrollment of Iowa State is also the employment growth in the city. We haven't had a static job base. It's been doing very well for the last 2 years. We're continuing to add jobs, not just at Iowa State, which are very good jobs, but also in the private sector. So we really are having a housing demand on all fronts. We have entry-level housing, move-up housing, apartment housing, whatever you want to think of, there's an interest in doing that in the city. So we've spent a lot of time in the last year kind of helping the council think through what are our growth policies and how do they fit for what we could see for housing production.
So while we see in the community a lot of the housing directed at students, I think what some people are saying is that maybe the young professionals or the new families are not having as much luck looking for that that home that they desire. Is that going to be addressed?
I think that's been brought to light, I think, in the last 6 to 8 months, as we're trying to think about our housing choices. I think Ames needs to be a little more strategic on picking the type of zoning district that supports that intended outcome. So in some cases, it's not okay just to say all apartment types are okay. Maybe we need to work with a developer to say, I really will provide 2-bedroom units, which are marketable to a wide range of people and not just to students or not just to one market segment. That's something that we're working a lot more with applicants on. Obviously, Campus Town's always going to be student-oriented, but some of the other projects we're trying to help the developers think, hey, there's more of a market here that we want to see you look into and see what we can do with that.
So maybe it's just me, but am I also seeing much more of an interest in housing for active seniors or the empty nester kind of?
We did have two aren't complete, but we had 2 significant senior housing projects that were proposed about 1.5 years ago. One is complete in North Ames. I think it's called Northridge Village. It's a mix of senior apartments and continuing care facilities. And then on South Ames, we have another project off of Oakwood Road called the Village Co-op, which is strictly senior housing units. So that's another one of those housing segments that were a very highly rated retirement destination for people. We have the kinds of amenities and services that people would seek out in retirement age. So that's another type of housing that we've seen now built, and I would expect we'd see another one come along as this other over the next year or two as well.
So just quickly, as you glimpse into the future, so what do you see coming up for Ames? What should residents be on the lookout for?
I think the biggest focus has been on support of the Iowa State Research Park expansion. You've seen a lot of construction activity out at University and Airport Road. That's all to facilitate the expansion a little bit further south from the web filings building, or Workiva, I'm sorry, to have a new row of development, essentially. The research park will be filling up. If you haven't been out there in the last year, there's 3 major projects that will be under construction or finished in the next year. And then you have the new phase of development too. So we're working a lot with trying to work with the research park and how to structure that. That's also putting a lot more focus on South Ames. So South Ames is going to see a commercial restaurant development go into the area of Airport Road as part of the research park, which is a new amenity and service that South Ames has never had in that area. We're also going to see more housing interest probably as well. The connection of jobs to housing right there is just really an evident need when we're talking about thousands of jobs being in that part of town. So that's really the big push right now, is how do we set up the employment base for the city and have that expanded economic growth.
Great. So you've talked about growth in North Ames on campus, and now we have to look forward to the growth in South Ames.
Yes.
Great. Well, Kelly, it's always a pleasure to get this information and sort of get your insights on the future of planning in Ames. Thanks for stopping by.
You're welcome very much.
So if you have plans for this holiday season, remember one of those things might be getting your yard waste put away. If you have yard waste you still need to get rid of, remember the last final yard waste free day of the season is Saturday, December 5th at Chamness Technology. Also, we have some makeup yard waste free days for the yard waste free day that was canceled on November 21st. That information is on our website at cityofames.org. Well, that's our show for today. Thanks for watching, and tune in next week for This Week in Ames.